to the lesser charge of manslaughter. Newstalk's courts correspondent Frank Graney reports.
In the days leading up to Detective Colm Horgan's death near Main Street in Castlereagh, County Roscommon, Stephen Silver told the jury he was staying in a hotel in Dublin with an Australian woman, but he said he decided to go home early after getting it in his head that she was an MI6 agent who was out to get him. He said he also thought some English guys staying in the hotel were actually SAS, masquerading as builders. After he left the hotel on the day of the shooting, the jury was shown CCTV footage of him checking under his van for explosive devices. He told the court he has had many episodes of psychiatric illness which have resulted in 17 hospital admissions, some of which were involuntary. He said he has been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and bipolar disorder. Mr. Silver, who has pleaded not guilty to murder but guilty of manslaughter by diminished responsibility, is due to resume giving his evidence tomorrow.
Leaders of the North's main political parties have been holding discussions with the Northern Secretary. It comes as Chris Heaton-Harris reiterated his view that if parties fail to restore the executive, he would call an election. They have until Friday to reach an agreement to avoid a fresh poll. In the Dáil earlier, Taoiseach Micheál Martin insisted that if the deadlock continues, there can't be a return to direct rule.
Now, in the event that there is a sustained period with no functioning of the Northern Ireland Executive or the Assembly, there cannot be a return to the direct rule arrangements of the past. And the government will fully pursue its consultative role under the Good Friday Agreement. That is the position that we will exhaust every possibility within that framework.
The government should defer the concrete levy by 2 years, according to the Construction Federation Industry. The CIF say the concrete levy will be passed on to first-time buyers. The levy, which was recently reduced to 5%, is expected to be introduced in September next year. It's 7:02.
Newstalk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. See your Premier League team this year with daily flights to Liverpool, Manchester and London.
Mostly cloudy tomorrow morning with showery outbreaks of rain, however drier in most places during the afternoon. Highest temperatures of 15 to 18 degrees. And now you're up to date on Newstalk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo.
This is Newstalk.
Welcome along, great to have you with us on a Wednesday evening, Champions League evening as well. Dion Fanning will be in studio. We will keep an eye on the live football, of course, and also I'm sure some of you noted this week marked the passing of the Rock of Gibraltar, so we will remember Ferguson versus McNair and the Glazer-shaped ramifications of that ordeal. So that's on the way between 9 and 10. Wednesday night rugby after 8 o'clock. Ian McKinley, Italian international, much more besides, of course, as well, in studio talking about his new book and, of course, the cricket. Who doesn't love a famous Duckworth-Lewis-Stern win against the English? Historic day at the T20 World Cup. Laura Delaney will be with us this hour. 53106 text number. We're at Off the Bull on Twitter. Laura Delaney being, of course, captain of the women's team, and her brother Gareth on the men's team this morning over in Australia. Michael McCarthy, hello.
Hi, Joe.
God bless Duckworth, Lewis and Stern. Is Stern?
Where did the Stern thing come about?
It's a recent addition to Duckworth and Lewis, but I'm seeing it everywhere today.
Yeah, well, look, all I know is that when I tuned in, the voice of Michael Atherton, former English cricket and respected commentator, said that Ireland deserved the win. We're ahead at the time, and even though it didn't end in a conventional way, Ireland were the deserved winners. So we beat England in a World Cup. I don't think that's anything to be sneezed at. It's quite incredible, actually.
Richie McCormack, I'm no expert in Duckworth, Lewis, Stern, but we bloody deserved it.
Yeah. It's the best rain-related calculation / cricket-related supergroup that has ever existed. Duckworth Lewis. It's fantastic.
Duckworth Lewis Stern. Sorry.
Was Brian Blessed was in?
Give Stern his dues, please.
Am I wrong in saying that? Am I getting confused? Am I getting two people confused?
Brian Blessed.
Was Brian Blessed in a band called the Duckworth Lewis Method? No.
No.
I've made Richie's day there with my stupidity.
It's like, yeah, okay. No, that was Thomas Walsh and Pugwash and Neil Hannon from the Divine Comedy, where the two protagonists in that.
Where did I get blind?
Star of stage and screen and Peppa Pig, Brian Blessed. No. Although I kind of want to hear a lot of their songs redone with Brian Blessed on vocals now. I'm going to put that to Tom off air once we're finished here.
Michael, don't be hurting yourself. Ignorance is not stupidity. Well, it's stupid. Just ignorant.
I've Googled the Duckworth Lewis Method and Brian Blessed, and suffice to say, brings back no results.
Is Stern not in there? Duckworth, Lewis, Stern. DLS is all I'm seeing all day.
Okay, I'm going to look up Stern as well. You keep talking in the meantime, though.
No, it's fine. So Laura Delaney will join us. Her brother playing on the team this morning, and she is captain of the women's team as well, so I'm sure a fun household to watch that game in. We are going to crack on. Ian McKinley on the way after 8 o'clock. I think people generally au fait with Ian's story. 20 years of age, really promising player. Leinster offering him full-time contract, and then just freak incident. His own teammate, it turned out, stood connected with eyeball, and to use the phrase in his own book, the eyeball burst. And in a moment, I mean, this sudden thing of your left eye, the vision just goes, everything's suddenly black. And he made a great recovery and did, feature for a season then as a 21-year-old for Leinster. And then there was always the possibility of complication, and it didn't even happen subsequently in a match or in any kind of physical activity. He was just in the car. He was on a weekend away with some friends, and suddenly the vision went and it was irretrievable, and he retired from rugby. And there were several years out in Italy coaching where the reality of his new situation really hit him, watching players he'd played with and come through with suddenly becoming the mainstays in Leinster team that was doing very well, was almost too much to bear, and so hence the mad quest in many ways to get protective goggles which were adequate and to try and somehow make it in professional rugby, not just at a substandard level, but to go back and play professional rugby. And he did it and became an international and retired in the last year or two. COVID obviously interrupted things a touch, but completely mad. Extraordinary
There's
story.
not many individuals in any sport that a singular campaign got rules changed.
Yeah, true.
I remember how long were we following this, before he even got to play for Italy, or got to play professionally. There was so many, over and backs with World Rugby before the rules were eventually changed and the goggles became a recognised, part of the apparel or whatever it is. Just so interesting. But I don't know, I was listening to him, talk about, how many times do you see people come out of rucks with maybe a gash just above their eye, maybe on their eyebrow, and you're just thinking to yourself, it's not how does this not happen, but it's such a freak thing. But I suppose it kind of made me realise how possible it is, so even though it's a freak incident, I'm almost surprised something like this doesn't happen more often, given what's happening at the bottom of a ruck in a game of rugby. Absolutely horrifying, really. And it's so long since it happened to Ian, and we've all known him through so much of the journey. To actually think about that again in terms of what actually happened is just, again, horrifying.
And I suppose what struck me is, as a player, when he was playing with Italy and playing with Benetton, and he was asked, how do you manage with vision in one eye? And he would downplay it and say, it's not so bad. Now he's free to say, it was a bloody nightmare. It was crazy. He talks about if the floodlights at certain grounds were that bit lower, for instance, Rodney Parade, it was incredibly difficult. As soon as there was any rain, nightmare. Imagine driving in your car without window wipers.
Yeah.
So incredibly difficult. And then, he had so many spare goggles with him at a game because mud would get here or there. Or there was one incident where a mosquito just hit the goggle and he was without, just couldn't see. And it's like all of these things were going on. And he talked about how, his preferred and most effective kick as a left-footed out half was a spiral kick. But there were numerous times, it didn't always happen, which I think makes it trickier because you don't know when it's going to happen or not happen. But there were times where he would drop the ball and as he's about to kick the ball, it goes out of sight.
Yeah.
He was playing the Six Nations.
I know. That's what I was thinking. It was like, this is at Twickenham.
I can empathise to a great degree, being somebody who is partially sighted as well, and I've only got vision in one eye too. So that has put out the window so many things in life. Basically anything that involves an implement. So the idea of playing golf or the idea of playing tennis, it requires a lot of adjustment and a lot of hard work and a lot of practice because everything's slightly askew. So to lose your vision as you're a player, to partially lose your vision, and then to readjust to the point where you can still play professionally is just remarkable. And I don't think that should be underplayed at all on Ian McKinley's part, because what he managed to achieve by coming back is just remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable stuff.
Yeah, it is.
At an international level.
Yeah.
Amazing.
He said it was interesting. He said his mum, who I'm sure would be watching him very closely as opposed to the other 29 fellas on the pitch, said sometimes it would look like there was almost a bee buzzing around him because he was always having to turn his head more. You know, because he on Twitter now they show football players who are getting great credit for scanning or having a glance over the shoulder as they receive a pass. Yeah, he was doing it because he couldn't see his inside defender, Rich.
Yeah, it's like I'm constantly getting surprised by stuff coming from my right hand side, and that's been going on for 40 years. So for it, like I say, for it to be a relatively new thing, and for it to be in a high contact sport like rugby is, just the vision, the awareness, the adjustments, I can't, and again I say this with experience, I can't comprehend how it is to adjust to it because I've just been that way my whole life.
Right.
To go from being a 20/20 vision player on the pitch to being somebody who's lost that, but still, as Mick says, to compete at an international grade, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It really is. It's truly mind-boggling, and I've nothing but admiration for him for what he's done in terms of being able to come back and that level of determination and that being a beacon, I guess, for people who are who have suffered different kind of vision impairments.
Wow, I'm complete pioneer, quite literally, with the goggles, and I think people were under the misapprehension that the goggles somehow aided his vision or increased his vision or were working in that kind of a sphere, whereas, to be very clear, he had zero vision in his left eye and the goggles were purely protective. It was purely I've lost vision in one eye, I cannot afford to lose vision in my other eye. Because you see, when he came back initially and when the thing first happened, and he did make a comeback for a good year before the retina detached in the car and he lost his sight, there were attempted gougings, so he was playing, well, he doesn't name teams, I'm sure, for legal reasons, but I mean, there was attempted gougings on 2 occasions, certainly, and in one instance, his teammates got very, very angry, naturally, and said, do you not know what just happened to this guy a few months ago? And the response from the offender was, well, I broke my leg last year, you don't hear me going on about it, which was quite something. So, yeah, I know, amazing. So once the vision fully went in his left eye,
I'm surprised he didn't get his leg broke again immediately.
I mean, come on.
I can't believe that.
So once he lost the vision in his left eye, the goggles purely protective. Because you could look. I looked at him initially. I thought, is this allowing it to be partially sighted in some way? But no, it wasn't. It was just purely I can't lose the other eye.
It's not. Yeah, they weren't like glasses. For want of a better
no,
word.
they weren't glasses.
It was,
exactly. Yeah. So that's on the way.
Was there any sense, and this is, I'm not being mischievous there, but was there any sense that he was attempted to be gouged twice, like because he was just playing rugby and that happens to rugby players, or because people knew of his injury?
I would guess the latter.
Like, that is disgusting.
Yeah.
And that I would guess the latter too, and I just wanted to sort of check in case I was thinking the worst of human nature, but that is it's pretty low. So awful.
I think from memory, having read the book a couple of days ago, I think one of the lines said back to him that one of the offenders was, look, he's a bit of a loose cannon, from his own crew. Those loose cannons circulate sport, unfortunately, at all levels. They get away with all sorts. So a loose cannon was the euphemism.
Look, you can't be angry at him. He's a loose cannon.
A bit of that.
Who probably doesn't belong on a sporting field, but sure, we don't say the second part of the sentence.
He can do things on a sports field he wouldn't get arrested for, so he loves he loves a bit of aggression in sport,
Yeah, he loves trying to ruin a life, yeah.
The Newsround brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember Effortless Shave Magnificent Mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. So, Richie, we are starting with events in Melbourne this morning.
Yeah, another famous morning for Irish cricket on the world stage. They beat England by 5 runs, aided by the Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method. Stern coming on board Joe after 2015, the retirement of the other pair. Rain called an early halt to play in their T20 World Cup match at the MCG. Captain Andy Balbirnie, top scorer for Ireland with 62 of 47 deliveries, with Ireland posting a total of 157. The wickets of Joss Butler, Alex Hales and Ben Stokes fell for just 29 runs as England struggled with their response early on. They'd recovered to 105 for 5 with 5.5 overs left to bat before rain did stop play. Despite the nature of the victory, Balbirnie felt his side were full value for the win.
I think so. I mean, you guys will have opinions naturally, but I think from where we sit, we felt like we deserved to win that game. We batted pretty well into the last 5-6 overs. We should have got 170, 180 without doubt, and that is something we'll look to work on But it's not easy coming for new batters to come in, and you have someone like Mark Wood bowling as quickly as he does on a pitch that offered a bit of kind of spongy bounce and was hard to pick up. We took our blows. There was a couple of helmet hits. I got hit in the finger, but we rode the wave a bit and got a total on the board.
Yeah, amazing. And, there have been some accusations of English complacency because apparently their coaching staff pre-game was saying things like, well, look, we just want to get through the game without any injuries. And these are one of the pre-tournament favourites, so certainly they would have looked at Ireland as routine.
I'd be interested to hear what Laura says in a few minutes, but for me, I think that Ireland getting through that group stage, especially having lost an early game that they would have been really disappointed with, but to beat the West Indies, one of the traditional nations, is kind of what Ireland want to do in a World Cup. Is either 20 or 50 overs is to probably do that. They won't think that, but you'd imagine looking at it from Cricket Ireland's point of view, that's seen as success. But then once you get into these Super 12s, you've got 5 games. You're going to hope to beat Afghanistan for sure. Mm-hmm. That's going to be that's going to be a marker for them. But then they've got those 4 other games against New Zealand, Australia, England, and Sri Lanka. They've already lost to Sri Lanka. I think beating one of them had to be the way you think it. And if you're going to pick one, maybe it's Australia over there, but I think it's always going to be England, isn't it?
Yeah. Quick Google. Don't turn off your radios, this won't last long. Why has Stern been added to Duckworth Lewis? The burning question on the internet. So, Michael, I know you'll be keen to know.
Oh, yeah.
An updated version of the method introduced, as Richie said there, in 2015 because the original algorithm was designed when cricket scoring wasn't especially high. So a new one was needed. It's called Duckworth Lewis Stern method after Australian professor Steve Stern. Now, you telling me there's not a chat with Steve Stern some night in the show? Make it a Thursday.
I'll just see when I'm on holiday. Make it a
Thursday or Friday would be good, I think.
So I don't know how that works, but I was just looking at it there. So there was 33 balls left that England needed 52 to win. I would say that is not an insurmountable chase by any means. It's probably a very likely chase in T20 level. The difference is England had 5 wickets down. So you are going, as you go chasing that is not, you're into your bowlers and you're going to be losing wickets pretty quickly. So I would say Ireland were probably favourites there, but probably to bowl them out more so than England not catching them. Yeah.
Read one piece saying that at the time of the rain, England were about 5 runs short of where they might need to be in the eyes of Professor Steve Stern and colleagues.
And the guys.
The guys. Yeah, the old-timers. So it wasn't a million miles away, but about 5 runs
it was
short.
A close game, but Ireland were well in it, and they were ahead when that happens, and that's the rules
Completely
of the game.
Deserved it.
Yeah.
So I know I said that somewhat sarcastically. They actually completely did deserve it. Everybody's acknowledged that. Yeah. So we'll be talking to Laura Delaney in about 10-15 minutes time or so. There is football this evening, Rich.
Yeah, Afghanistan on Friday for Ireland, by the way, in their next T20 game. The battle for promotion to the SSE Electricity Premier Division heats up tonight. First Division runners-up Waterford are away to Treaty United for the first leg of their playoff. Kick-off in that one has been pushed back from 7:45 to 8 o'clock. Kick-off time remains at Bishopsgate at 7:45 with Longford Town playing host to Galway United. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp claims to be unconcerned by their poor away form this season. They're in Amsterdam tonight, needing just a point from their game with Ajax to book a Champions League last 16 place. Liverpool's only away win this season come against Rangers, that in the previous round of fixtures. 3 changes for Liverpool tonight. The team in full has Alisson in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Joe Gomez, Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson as their back 4. Fabinho, Jordan Henderson and Harvey Elliott are in midfield, and then a front 3 of Roberto Firmino, Mo Salah and Darwin Nunez. For Ajax, same formation for them, 4-3-3. Remco Pasveer starts in goal. Jorge Sanchez, Urian Timber, Calvin Bassey and Dali Blint are in defence. Edson Alvarez, Davy Klaassen and Stephen Berghuis are in midfield. Stephen Bergwijn, Dusan Tadic and Brian Brobby are their front 3. Elsewhere in that group, Napoli will secure a top spot with a win at home to Rangers. Tottenham can also book their knockout place tonight if they win at home to Sporting. Matt Doherty back in the Spurs starting 11. Hugo Lloris in goal for them. Back 3 of Christian Romero, Eric Dyer and Ben Davies. Doherty, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Rodrigo Bentancur and Ivan Perisic are across midfield. Then it's Heung-min Son and Lucas Moura in support of Harry Kane. Elsewhere in Group D, Marseille go to Eintracht Frankfurt. In the group of death, Barcelona will miss out on the last 16 of the Champions League for the second year running. Their result at home to Bayern Munich tonight will count for nothing if Inter beat Plzen, and the Nerazzurri are doing their part, leading the Czech champions by 3-0. There's an 8 p.m. start at the Camp Nou. Club Brugge needed only a draw to seal top spot in Group B this evening. It's all gone pear-shaped for them. They hadn't conceded a goal prior to tonight's game at home to Porto, but they're 4-0 down and have also missed a penalty. The group's other game has an 8 p.m. start, with Atletico Madrid needing a win at home to Bayer Leverkusen. Chelsea look to make it back-to-back wins in Group A of the Women's Champions League tonight. Paul Green remains in temporary charge for their meeting with the Albanian champions Vllaznia.
Somebody who's been listening to the radio all day thought that Duckworth-Lewis method was a contraceptive method. Which I don't believe. But it's a good gag. John and Dublin, lads, when you do get Professor Steve Stern on the show, put him on with Kenny Cunningham. It would be radio gold. It's hard to know where that would go.
Yeah, I would listen though. You were trying to sell me on a Steve Stern piece earlier, and I wasn't interested. I was suggesting I go on holidays, but now I'm all in. Yeah.
Maybe, imagine if it had to be extrapolated out for other sports, Like, imagine in football, you just couldn't play in the rain for whatever reason, and you had to say, XG, my general feel of things.
Oh, God, it'd be the end of the world.
Yeah, you couldn't, it just wouldn't work, it wouldn't be accepted.
Luckily, you can play football in the rain.
Yeah, similarly, tennis, they just wait and come back out.
Yeah. Maybe they should have a new rule in tennis that's just like, both of you are knocked out because of the weather until someone gets a bye into the next round. It would cause chaos at Wimbledon. It'd be great crack.
Yeah. I presume in cricket it's generally accepted and it's not a contentious issue, or is there often we've been screwed here by Stern and friends?
There was I was watching a clip today. One of the people on TalkSport was getting in a tiz, obviously enough because it's TalkSport, about the result and saying that Duckworth-Lewis Stern essentially has no place in T20 because the margins in T20 are so narrow.
Yeah.
Because of the extremely limited overs nature of the game, that was invented initially for the 50-over version of one-day cricket, and to bring it down to T20 doesn't essentially have the same, impact is probably the wrong word, but the same kind of authority.
Yeah, I think, without knowing a bloody thing about it, I can understand the logic. It's quite a small sample size to have to extrapolate the victor as opposed to 2 days into a test match.
Now, if you...
With all due respect to Professor Steve Stern.
But if you play the game knowing it's not just about where we are at the 20 overs. It could rain today. We have to be at a certain run rate today. Like, England still knew what they had to do in a way. You know what I mean? I don't think the rain was, like, it couldn't have been a massive surprise either. Like, there is such a thing as weather forecasts. And
no, it's true.
Different things.
I
would rather have that than no result, which is what cricket would have been in the past. So you can't replay these games, one-day games or 2020 games. There's a full schedule.
No, I get
there's
that.
a stadium. There's no time for it in a tournament. I'd rather have a result based on some kind of play.
Yeah.
And not just like a pools panel result or both teams get a draw.
On your point about the English being aware that it's coming and it's looming, absolutely that is a factor, and I heard somebody today talking about how it's a big advantage to bat first instead of target, and it's very much part of the tactics.
Yeah.
And you're very aware at all times of where are we on Duckworth-Lewis Stern, and are we ahead, are we behind, do we need to push, not push. So news, I think Rory O'Connor had the exclusive, Richie, in the Irish Independent here.
Yeah, the IRFU reportedly struggling to get women's 15s players to accept the union's professional contract offers. Back in August, the IRFU announced it will be offering 43 centralised contracts. Those operating in the Sevens programme were already under contract, and it was the first time that women playing the 15s format were offered professional terms by their own union. As you mentioned, Rory O'Connor's piece claimed that of the 18 full-time contracts offered to 15s players, only 7 have been taken up. Some players are believed to have been offered just €15,000 plus incentives to put pen to paper.
Yeah, the €15,000 figure certainly catches the eye. Now, Rory's piece did say that several players had certainly been offered more money in line with what other countries were paying their female players at the moment, but certainly you're not surprised to see the uptake on giving up my professional career to take 15 grand a year as being turned down. And the argument will be made, well, the women's team aren't generating enough money to justify salaries any bigger than that. But the obvious retort to that is that the men's senior team in Irish rugby generate about 86-87% of all revenue anyway. So nobody really is washing their face, and they're paid very well. So in this instance, I think the players will have public backing and they should dig in for the best possible contracts, and the IRFU will be forced to pay up.
It's a ridiculous point as well for a couple of reasons, but one of them is that, this is the standard of the game. So we either don't have a women's team or we have to make it professional, and that has to be competitive enough for people to sign the contracts. and actually play. So, like, I think 15 is a unfortunate number because those incentives, I'd imagine an awful lot of them it's the low end, obviously,
Yeah, it is.
and the incentives would, hopefully bring it up to some sort of, at least a livable wage. But again, it's just not enough. Like, you can't expect people for a guarantee of, absolute poverty, €15,000 a year. You can't expect them to give up their careers. So, we have to follow the standards. We have to make the women's game competitive if we're going to have it at all. And that's how maybe it will generate money in the future if you're looking at this as some sort of profit-making endeavour, which I don't think we should be. It's still a sporting, it's we're looking at it as it's a sporting organisation. It's a not-for-profit. We just need to make sure that we have a team that's able to compete at their level. And it's not going to be possible without professionalism. So I think the idea about them generating money is such a red herring. I don't understand it.
No, but it will be talked about. And people will say it in a legitimate way. Well, do you get what you're bringing in? But again, that doesn't apply across the board in Irish rugby. The men's team is the generator. So Katie Taylor then?
Yeah, she was speaking last night saying she's anxious to get a homecoming fight at Croke Park over the line for next year. The undisputed lightweight champion claims a date had been booked for September for a rematch with Amanda Serrano. Taylor puts her titles on the line at Wembley Arena on Saturday instead against Karen Carvajal. Speaking on Ariel Helwani's podcast, Taylor also talked up potential fights with MMA veterans Chris Cyborg and Holly Holm.
Eric Ten Hag talking about guess who?
Yeah, he's confirmed that Cristiano Ronaldo is in the squad. John O'Kane, for tomorrow's Europa League game with Sheriff. The 37-year-old was forced to train away from the first team and played no part in their draw with Chelsea, having refused to come on as a sub against Tottenham last week. Meanwhile, the United manager says they will be without Rafael Varane until the World Cup due to a hamstring injury.
Yes, Cristiano will be in the squad tomorrow, and Rafa Varane isn't in the squad, so he will go out. Certainly till World Cup, and so he will not play this in this block for Man United.
Can he play in the World Cup?
I think so, but the prognosis, we have to wait. We have to see how it develops, how his rehab will develop.
So the British Boxing Board of Control then, I mean, it's amazing how the Ben drugs test, I still don't actually know if the B sample has ever been tested or where we are in that, but they've upheld some kind of allegation today, Richie.
Yeah, that allegation of misconduct has been upheld against Conor Benn following that failed drugs test. He was due to face fellow British fighter Chris Eubank Jr. earlier this month, but the bout was called off after details of the offence became public. Ben, who has relinquished his licence, maintains his innocence and insists he is a clean athlete. He didn't appear at today's hearing.
And I haven't seen any word on the B sample.
No, me neither. It's interesting to note that obviously we did have the two different testing regimens. So there was the VADA and the UK anti-doping as well. So full clarity on that not forthcoming as of yet. No. Which probably needs to happen if this case is going to be either furthered or to be put to bed. And I think the former is probably the case that I think is the most likely resolution.
Texting lads, I was listening to a podcast earlier where they spoke of the win over England. I genuinely thought Duckworth Lewis was the surname of one of our players. Perhaps we'd nabbed in the granny rule. I don't follow cricket, as you can tell. I can see how that would be a thing. Ireland win
thanks to Duckworth Lewis.
Yeah. Duckworth Lewis as Ireland win. That's very doable. Very doable.
Batting number 3, Duckworth Lewis. He's also a
Joe is making sure that Stern gets his Steve Stern gets his due here.
The man has revolutionised Duckworth Lewis.
Yeah.
And he's a professor, for God's sake. Give him his due.
So there we go. I believe that one. I still don't believe the contraceptive method one, but it was a good gag all the same. Richie, we're out of time. Thank you.
Nice and gents.
Michael.
Cheers, lads.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
Now, we had 11 consecutive winners and finally a rollover. Somebody missed Barry's call, so the number for tomorrow is 60,292 euro and 91 cents. Text play to 57557. Get your entry in by 3 o'clock tomorrow, and then across the Go Loud network of stations, Barry Dunn will make the call. If your phone rings, answer within 5